And thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Let's Talk, now live on YouTube and on Facebook. And you can also call us 615-737-9292. You can post your questions, your comments to Let's Talk Nashville. 92Qs. Let's Talk Nashville. Also, go to YouTube. 92Qs YouTube. All right. Good to see you. And, of course, thank you so much for joining us as you do. Bring you the issues that affect you not only here in Nashville, around the state, and then around the world, especially here in Middle Tennessee as well. Thank you. Tell a friend. Let's Talk is now on. We have several guests aboard the program today, and because we have an issue that is going on and needs to go away, so we've invited the experts. We want to talk about domestic abuse. I know you've been hearing a lot in the news lately about entertainers or anyone committing domestic abuse, which is, in fact, domestic violence. And for almost 20 years, every year, we bring in the expert. We bring in the big guns. And the big gun is General Sessions Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes. And good to see you again, Judge Hayes.
Good afternoon. I'm excited about the new platform.
Yes.
And communicating this important information through YouTube and Facebook, through video. That is awesome.
Right. And we're glad to have you back.
Yes.
21 years now.
It's a long time. I have to be careful about my cell phone usage and everything since we're going to be on camera. I got to be on my P's and Q's.
No, you know everything. I'm just here to ask you the questions, and also for our viewing audience and people who are listening as well. And, of course, domestic abuse. We hear about it, we talk about it, but it's a problem that does not seem like it's going away.
Right.
And we're glad that you're here to break it down, because we do have new viewers on what is domestic abuse, what is domestic violence. By the way, are you wearing your orange? Because June is also Gun Violence Prevention Awareness Month. And people are wearing orange. If you're wondering, hey, there's somebody's in town. No, they're just bringing awareness to something that is going on. Also, we've invited Miss Tina Fox. She is the Director of Community Relations and statewide Director of Batterer Intervention Programs for the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Good to see you again, Ms. Fox.
Thank you, EA. It is an honor, as always, to be in your presence. And it's also an honor to be a studio guest.
The honor is all mine.
Well, thank you.
I'm in awe. I have Tina Fox.
She's a superstar. She's amazing.
No, we are honored on behalf of the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence to take part of this important conversation. And I'm just as excited as Judge Hayes, because here we have an opportunity to talk about batterer intervention.
Yes.
When we talk about domestic violence, we have to include batterer intervention. I'm excited to be here on this afternoon.
Well, we know about the victims, but what about the purpose or the person who's doing this?
Yes, sir.
So we want to talk on finding out ways to help them so there
sir.
doesn't be a reoccurrence. Speaking of survivors, Miss Kim Tipton is also on the panel with us. Good to see you, Miss Tipton.
Good to see you as well.
All right, come a little closer to the mic.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Good to see you as well.
I understand you are a survivor.
I am. Yes, sir, I am.
We're going to get to your story, and maybe your story can encourage others to seek help.
Of course, absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
All right. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, of course, you can post your questions. And if you have a call, 615-737-9292. Let's begin by what is domestic abuse, Judge?
Right. Well, let me just talk about domestic violence.
All right.
Domestic abuse is kind of a term of art in the Tennessee state law.
Okay.
So domestic violence.
So we'll take domestic abuse out.
We're going to talk about it.
Okay.
Domestic violence is a set of behaviors that seeks to take power and control away from a person. These behaviors can be physical and emotional, even financial abuse. Someone forcing someone to work or forcing someone not to work and limiting their income and access to money. Emotional abuse, name calling, threats to take children away from the victim. Also making the victim feel less than who they really are, through name calling and other types of insults. And a lot of times, batters who are have faith context sometimes use faith, um, scriptures and sacred texts against the victim to convince them that they need to stay here and that their behavior is exactly appropriate under these sacred texts. And then, of course, physical violence, where you have someone who's actually hitting the person or threatening the person with a weapon, strangulation. There's a lot of work that's being done around strangulation. All of these
Wow.
behaviors are not necessarily criminal, but they do constitute domestic violence. Domestic abuse under the statute, the Tennessee law is defined as a threat or an actual harm to the person, their pets, or their property. When domestic violence rises to the level of domestic abuse, then there are certain legal remedies that are available to victims of domestic violence.
And also, domestic violence can hit anyone,
Yes.
regardless of their age.
Regardless of
The
their
race.
age, gender, race, cultural context, faith context, regardless of your size, your economic background, anybody can be a perpetrator of domestic violence and anybody can be a victim of domestic violence. So batterers don't wear shirts to say, oh, I'm a batterer. And these things happen in the context of usually intimate partner relationships, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, or girlfriend, boyfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, relationships. People have been dating, they've been sexual with one another. All of these things are defined in the statute. Now, what Tennessee law does, it also allows roommates to file for legal action under the Domestic Abuse Act. So, if A and B are roommates,
Right.
and A hits B and threatens B and puts B in fear, B may be eligible for an order of protection, and A would probably be convicted of domestic assault if there was a domestic assault.
Let's try to cut it off at the beginning. Now, relationships don't start off abusive. They start off with, let me take you out to dinner, let's go to a movie, let me buy you flowers, candy, whatever. And then what happens between that point and the batterer who decides, well, now it's time for me to do abuse?
Well, I would say a good example of this is a Medea's family reunion.
All
This
right.
guy
I remember the movie.
appears wonderful. He appears great. He's
Yeah.
loving. He's taking care of business. And then all of a sudden, when the relationship gets really serious, they're about to get engaged, he starts to control, to put some things in place to try to control her, isolating behavior. You can't go here. You can't hang with your family. You know, he doesn't really like her hanging with her sister. So all these things gradually lead to the window scene where he's about to push her out the window because she tries to escape the abuse. But the Tennessee Coalition, the YW, all of these organizations have some great information on how to look for signs of domestic violence. And some of those signs are there at the beginning before the engagement. Kind of control what the person wears, constantly calling the person, showing up at the person's workplace.
That sounds like the time to start move along and start looking to go out with someone else.
And I think our other panelists can help with this. But if you do not know what these signs are, and you don't hear information about this, you're not going to know what to look for. Because what person doesn't want a lot of attention? What person doesn't want to be called and text? But when it becomes excessive and the questioning and all of that, that's when the red flags go up. This is why it's important to have shows like this, not just during Domestic Violence Month,
right?
But
which is
all
in
the
October,
time,
by the way.
Which is in October, but we all need to continuously have this conversation. We have wonderful groups. The YW does work around healthy masculinity for boys, and they have their girls club as well. All of those opportunities can help prevent someone becoming a perpetrator or a victim of domestic violence. I honestly did not know all of what I know about domestic violence before I started working at the Tennessee Coalition. And I was well into an adult, and just learning that these things are not healthy, that these things are controlling. They're more than toxicity, but these are controlling, dangerous behaviors.
Wow. I want to get into the mind of the batterer, too.
Yeah, and before we go on, EA, if it's okay, just to Judge
Tina Fox.
Yes, sir. This is Tina Fox. Just to point out a thing or two that Judge Hayes just brought out. Number one, domestic violence is complicated, period. Okay? Secondly, I always ask during my domestic violence presentations, if you went out on a first date and he decided to use power and control over you, would there be a second date? Now, I'm saying he because 85% or more of all domestic violence cases are men battering women.
Right.
Okay.
And women, of course, battering men, but not that high percentage.
Not nearly as high, 85% or more. So when you look at women battering men, it's between 15-17%. Of course, these are reported numbers, and that's another conversation. Okay.
Right.
But going back to that question, if he used power and control on the first date, if he told you where to sit, if he told you what to eat, if he told you
ordered the food for you,
all of that, would there be a second date? And chances are there would not be a second date. So we don't see domestic violence on the first date. We see the representative on the first date. So domestic violence is about grooming the victim into her thinking that he genuinely and unconditionally loves her. And it's a process. Okay. So
on the first date, he's in love.
On the first date, he is in love because that representative is showing up. Okay. Not the actual domestic violence offender to be. Okay. And so that's why it's complicated. And as Judge Hayes alluded to, domestic violence doesn't have any boundaries. It happens to the best of us and the rest of us. And I, too, am glad that we're having this conversation in June as opposed to in October. We need to have it every day because for a domestic violence victim, every day is domestic violence.
Power and control, key words here. You can recognize it on the first date.
You should.
No, you sit there.
Right. You should be able to recognize it on the first date. Okay. But typically you won't see it for 6-7 months in. By that time, he is in your head.
What if he does all the right things like open up the car door? Showing that he's a gentleman.
He could be that gentleman. He could be chivalrous. Okay. But what we need to do is look out for those red flags along the way. Okay. Red flags such as jealousy, red flags such as the power and control mechanisms.
Who's that calling you?
Who's that calling you? I don't want you going to your mother's house tonight. You need to be with me. All those things that typically happen during the honeymoon phase. And we'll talk about that cycle of violence. But I just want to make sure that we understand that domestic violence typically does not show its ugly head on the first date.
All right.
Okay.
Second date, maybe third.
4th, 5th, 6th, 7th month, typically. Not the first, second, third dates, but on into the months. And sometimes we don't see it until a year or so.
Right. Tina Fox is the Director of Community Relations and statewide director of the Batterer Intervention Programs. That's Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Abuse. Metro General Sessions Court Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes is also our guest. And we have a victim or who now is a survivor, Kim. Thank you for coming and telling your story. What happened with you, Kim?
Of course. It's funny, Ms. Fox, just, she made that that scenario. And I actually did not go out on another date with a guy because he did order my food. He did insist that I sit here, park over here. And I just thought, no, I don't want to want to deal with this type of person. And so that was the one and only date. Little did I know that some years later I would run into it in another form of abuse. I could have definitely dodged a bullet there, but I never really thought about that. But I just knew that wasn't something for me. I just thought that was just it made me awkward. It made it awkward. So being a survivor, I've actually gone through a lot of what the judge had mentioned, financial abuse, physical, mental. I never knew the analogy of.
Now, wait a minute. You went through all of these types of abuse before we got to physical.
Yes.
Financial. What was he doing? Controlling the money?
Not wanting me to work. Not wanting me to
Telling
work.
you not to go to work?
Not to go to work.
Times are hard.
I can take care of you, which he was.
Okay.
He was.
And you settled for that.
And I did because there was nothing that, I had everything. I had a roof on my head. I had a car, I had the means, but there was a price for that, What I didn't know is that these were the makings of my abuser. I didn't know that this was happening to me. I didn't know that this is what it looked like.
What happens if you said no? If he says, don't wear that dress, I don't like it, and you wear it anyway, well, what happened?
Well, I probably wouldn't wear it. I wouldn't even test the waters. Because, again, you don't know what sets that person off. Right. You don't know, what triggers them. So, I just probably wasn't going to do it,
Did you verbally contest?
Towards the end, I did because I started to kind of get some power under my belt, so to say. But in the beginning, I didn't. I was very passive. I was very, and again, with my situation, like my grandparents raised me, but once they raised me, to the point where I felt like I was grown, then I started to kind of do my own thing. At this point, I was probably 16 years old. I had a kid. And this person allowed me to have a lifestyle and opportunity that I was not accustomed to outside of my grandparents. Right. With my mom, God rest her soul, she just wasn't able to provide those things.
Did the relationship ever turn violent?
It did.
Physical?
Yes. I've been thrown down the stairs. I've had a bowl of cereal thrown on me. I've had a cell phone thrown in my face. I actually have a scar on my hand from where I was pushed through a window. I could have lost my right hand.
That's when you said enough is enough.
No.
No?
No.
You stayed.
I stayed.
Did you feel in danger?
I did. I felt endangered, but I also felt protected. I also felt protected because he would say things to me like, no one's going to take care of you the way I take care of you. You got 3 kids. No one's going to provide for you the way I provide for you. No one's going to, and I believe that because we had groceries. We had, we could go wherever we wanted to go. Money wasn't an issue. I had a roof over my head, and so I was.
We're going to come back and we'll find out when enough was enough. Okay. And Kim is a survivor of domestic violence. Our guests include Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes. She is with General Sessions, and she handles orders of protection. Also, Tina Fox, Director of Community Relations and Statewide Director. You have a question, you have a comment, are you being abused? Post it, and we will try to get an answer for you. Also, if you want to call, 615-737-9292. Judge, it sounds like power and control with Kim.
I just want to, talk about her story a little bit. I think this batterer she's talking about probably knew what kind of environment she grew up in, and he knew exactly how to take control over her. So every batterer knows their victim, and every victim knows their batterer. And I also believe that she may not have understood all of this as domestic violence. I'm probably right on with that because probably during the time this happened, there's probably not a lot of education going on around domestic violence. Okay. So, and we've got more of that now. intrigued by the fact that she said, I was being abused, but yet I felt protected. I mean, you're
Wow.
getting these mixed messages while you're in this relationship. And on top of that, she may even had love for this guy at some point. And so she was taking all of this abuse because this is what she was used to. She was comfortable. She was afraid. A victim state for all sorts of reasons. And one reason is we as a community have not provided enough resources for them to land in safety. And one of those resources is education, that this is domestic violence, that this is not appropriate behavior. And then where a victim's going to live. The YW is packed, Morningstar packed. A lot of these places are full. And we're in a housing crisis as it is in Nashville. And just thinking about housing someone who needs housing. And how about health care? She said she wasn't allowed to work. You're not going to work. And you're not going to work because that way I can control you financially. You can't leave. You can't provide for yourself. And you can't provide your own health care. You can't provide for your own rent, your house note, and you can't take care of your kids.
What if you refuse to take money or assistance?
Well, I think the other thing that that the director here from the coalition touched on is that once you start refusing, which it sounds like Kim did at the end, that's when the violence starts to really pop off. The more a victim tries to take back power, and she mentioned that when she tries to take back power, that's when violence will escalate. So most of the violence that we hear on the news, it is a result of victims trying to leave. That's when it becomes really escalated, because the batterer has to think to the batterer self, what do I need to do to keep control?
Right.
And so, what I need to do is ante up the violence. So at first it was where you're supposed to sit, what you're going to wear.
Right.
Then the next is insults, and the next is pushing and shoving. And the next is throwing bowls of cereal at your face. And the next is pulling out a gun. And the next is throwing you out the window. So when a victim tries to leave, that's when violence escalates. And when the victim says, I'm going to start taking back power, then the batterer is saying, well, how can I exercise power? How far can I go? And batterers will threaten to kill themselves. I'm going to kill myself if you leave me.
Kill the children.
I'm going to kill the children. If you watch
Power and Control.
A movie for those who considered suicide for color girls.
Right.
And that was a horrible
I also
scene.
remember the movie The Burning Bed. We don't go that far.
Yeah, enough. These movies are very telling. And then, of course, Tina Turner's story. I think these movies are important. I hesitate to talk about them because people will look at that and say, "Oh, my abuse is not like that."
Right.
So mine must be pretty good. And the trick about an abusive relationship is that you do have control.
Is there help
the
for the
trick.
batterer? Help for the batterer. We want to examine that. Are you being abused? Do you know someone who may be being abused? Grab a phone line, 615-737-9292, or you can go to 92Q Nashville YouTube or 92Q Facebook. Post your questions and your comments. Help for the batterer. Is there help for the batterer? Ms.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk Facebook, too, by the way.
Yes, sir. So in Tennessee, we have 28 statewide certified batterer intervention programs.
All right.
In the state of Tennessee, we also have 95 counties. So when we look at the math isn't mathing, right? We don't have enough batterer intervention programs in this state to aid the batterer and also to aid the victim. At the core of every batterer intervention program is victim safety. Secondarily is offender accountability. And then thirdly, program integrity. And so if there is a case where a batterer is placed, court-ordered placed into a batterer intervention program, there is help for that batterer. That batterer has to complete at least 26 weeks of a curriculum that is certified through the Domestic Violence State Coordinating Council. Typically, it's once a week at a minimal of 90 minutes, 1.5 hours, and again for 26 weeks. That's half of a year. Is that enough? As the statewide batterer intervention program director, that is not enough.
Not enough.
That is not enough. A batterer cannot be healed from his offenses. He can be helped.
Right.
And so
or you can file charges and try to get an order of protection. We're going to cover that in just a moment.
Right.
But if you are being abused or you know someone who may be being abused, and you have a question or a comment for Miss Tina Fox, Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes, or the survivor Kim, who is here today sharing her story, grab a phone line, 615-737-9292. Post your questions. You may not want to tell about your personal life. Say you know somebody named Susie or whatever. Let's go to the lines. We have Shelley who has a question or a comment about domestic violence. Thanks for viewing. Go right ahead, Shelley.
Yes, hi. Thank you for having this show. It is definitely needed. And in light of like the Diddy situation, why is it that people, I don't know if people, like, for instance, believe the young lady Cassie because she looked good, you know, she was a celebrity, she was always on his arm and or whatever, but it wasn't until the video came out of the physical abuse that now the world is recognizing and seeing. So that was my first, the comment that I wanted to make. And also, how does financial abuse fit into the equation? You know what I'm saying? Like, could you explain on that just a little bit more for me?
All right. Thank you for viewing. Let's talk,
Thank
Shelley.
you so much.
All right. If you have a question or a comment, 615-737-9292. Let's go back to financial and emotional abuse.
So that's a really good question. So financial abuse can come in all sorts of ways. In Kim's situation, she was not allowed to work. So she may have been given an allowance. It sounds like she was given access to a car.
Right.
So everything was monitored by her batterers. That's a financial. I remember some years ago, I was doing a show, and this woman, she had a Mary Kay consultant at her house trying to sell Mary Kay, and her husband was showing up. She had to get the Mary Kay consultant out of the house as quickly as possible because she wasn't allowed to buy things. And so that's another example of financial abuse. Another example is you are made to work and you have to bring home the check. Yeah. You have to bring home the money. And you're being responsible for finances, and you can't even be in control of your own money that you're making.
When is it that you determine to order an order of protection? Well,
order protections are available in Davidson County. We have a Cadillac service here 24 hours. And so the Office of Family Safety helps to help victims to get these orders of protection. And you can go to night court. You can get an order of protection 24 hours. There are two parts to the order of protection. There's an ex parte order, and then there's a final order of protection. The ex parte order is granted if there is an immediate danger or harm alleged to the victim by the batterer or the respondent in this case. If the magistrate finds that there is an immediate danger or harm, the ex parte order will be granted, and it will be set for a hearing before one of the judges. And one of those judges is me. I hear a small order protection docket, and so at that hearing,
are they working?
Yes. Statistics show that orders of protection do work, that they're not just a piece of paper.
Because you're going to jail if you violate it.
It's a civil action, but if you violate the order of protection, it will turn criminal. And if you're convicted of violation of order of protection, it can be extended for 5 or 10 years, depending on the number of times it's been violated.
Just take me to the steps. A fight breaks out and the police are called. Someone's going to jail.
Yes, the primary, and I want to get to this is a good segue into this other part of the caller's question. The police were called out, and they are if there's probable cause that something happened, that they have to arrest the primary aggressor. So the primary aggressor is not always the first person who throws the punch. It's the primary aggressor. And the statute provides a long list of information that the officers can consider in determining who the primary aggressor is.
All right.
Once that person is arrested for, let's say, domestic assault, they are held up to 12 hours. So there's like a 12-hour hold on the person, which can be waived under certain circumstances, but most likely they'll have to wait in jail 12 hours before they can make bond. And then if the person does make bond, they will go on what is called the domestic bond docket here in Davidson County. So we have a dedicated 3 judges who hear domestic cases. That's Judge Escobar, Judge Walker, and Judge Floyd. And those cases will be resolved with the defense attorney and the district attorney and the judge resolving those cases. And then if a person does plead guilty or is found guilty of domestic assault, one of their options is to go to a batter's intervention program, which has to be certified by the Tennessee Coalition to end domestic and sexual violence, but really domestic violence state coordinating council.
Right. That's where Miss Tina Fox comes in.
That's where she comes in, and she does important work. And she's right. I used to work with BIPS programs, and it is a tough job trying to get programs certified, trying to make sure that these programs are doing exactly what they're supposed to do and they're helping who they're supposed to help. And she's exactly right. There is a victim safety component. I want to add to the caller. She said, why is it hard to believe that somebody committed domestic abuse? It is hard to believe that somebody committed domestic abuse. People don't wear shirts, and we don't want to think of our pastor or or somebody important in our community or as a person who committed an act of domestic violence or somebody who's a victim of domestic violence. I think people who are in professional jobs and have professional titles, they're extra vulnerable because they don't want to disclose that the person that they love and you see them with all the time is violent to them at home. And it's hard for us to believe that somebody would do this to somebody.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that we don't believe victims, okay? To her point is that we don't believe victims, that we don't accept their stories, and and it's not just domestic violence victims, but sexual assault victims as well, that we don't believe these stories.
Right.
And they are really hard stories.
Did you try to, Kim, who is a survivor of domestic violence, did you tell your friends, your family, your brothers, your men in the family, hey, this guy's doing this to me?
I did.
Okay.
Some of my friends, I did share with them, but then some of them, I just kind of really didn't want to get them involved because I knew I wasn't ready to go.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get them involved, they're going to come over and it's going to be, him and her and them. And, then I'm back with him. And then our relationship is strained as a friendship,
Right.
So I didn't want to do
What about
that.
family members?
Family members as well. I grew up when I was with my mom, I grew up seeing her being abused as well. And so for me, it was kind of the norm, I remember in one of my just darkest moments, I remember my mom telling me that he loves you.
Right.
Despite everything that I was going through, he loves you. He takes care of you. He provides for you, provides for the kids. They're not his kids. And I just thought, oh, okay, she's right. He does love me. My dad, who was away at that time, he would ask me and I would say no. No, well, I've been hearing, no, that's not right.
Denial.
You're not hearing,
We hear
you're
that
not
a lot.
hearing correctly.
Right.
Take it from me, it's not happening. It wasn't until I was well beyond that situation, an adult, had grown, just had growth within myself, that I was able to have a sit down conversation with him and let him know, hey, this was happening to me. This was, but
Did you try orders of protections?
I did. And I want to say, just kind of back to that a little bit, God's timing is everything, because I know that if my father was here at that time,
right,
that this probably would have been a whole different conversation that I would
right.
probably still
no
be
order of
healing
protection.
from.
We'll be calling.
But yes, and I did have an order of protection from on him. There was several, but then he would persuade me to, not go to court and not go through with it and things like that. And then I wouldn't. Well, finally, this last time I did an order of protection. Things were going great. He violated it. And,
Did you have to move out?
I did move out.
Okay.
And when I moved, you guys, I moved with nothing. Okay, because I didn't want him to call me and say, bring me back my beds, bring me back my TVs, bring me back my wash and dry, bring me back my spoons, my forks, my plates, my knives.
Right.
I left with nothing. And I had to start. At this point, I was working and had been working for about a year. I was able to kind of compromise on that because things were kind of exiting stage left at that point with our relationship. I was, again, building my power back up. And, I was just kind of like, steadfast that this is what I want for myself. And you are not allowed to come with me. Mm-hmm. And so when that happened, and
did the relationship ever turn violent?
It did, yes. I mean,
to the point of physical abuse.
Physical. He would, slap me, punch me, beat me.
Wow.
Again,
What about calling the police? I'm calling the police.
So I have done that before. I mean, I've done that several times. There has been times that, a police officer had walked in my house and I tell them what was going on. And I remember this one particular police, he walked in and he was like, I'm not dealing with this today. And he walked out.
Wow.
Thank God there were other police officers that were more compassionate, but he literally walked in to my house and said, I'm not dealing with this today.
Right.
He walked out. And so it didn't leave me any hope. There wasn't a lot of access that I had at that time that people have now. I sometimes think about if I was back then, like now, if the times were reversed and I had that access and I had these, social media and I had these, websites and things like that, would I have been there as long as I probably, had, that I did? The answer is no, because someone would have helped me.
Kim is a victim. She's also a survivor, and we want to get your message to other victims, probably. But first, let me go back to Miss Tina Fox, the batterer. Call the police. I don't care. Take me to jail. They actually invite the victim to call the law and get an order of protection. Is it working?
Yeah, so oftentimes we won't and don't have victims calling the police from the batterer's encouragement.
I got you.
Okay, that usually won't happen that way. Okay, the most dangerous times for victims is when they're trying to leave. Okay, on an average, a victim leaves at least 7 times before she either successfully and or unsuccessfully leaves. The second most dangerous time for victims is when she's pregnant.
Okay.
The third most dangerous time is when she is filing that order of protection.
Okay.
Those divorce papers, any legal documentations. And so you ask, why are those the most dangerous times?
Right. It's getting real to the batterer.
Because he is losing that power and control that he once had. The most dangerous times for police officers is when they are responding to domestic violence calls.
Wow.
40% of all police officers' deaths are from domestic violence calls. So this is very serious. So we should encourage a victim to leave.
Yes.
Okay, because we are not giving them the tools necessary Okay, when we say we hear this question often. Why doesn't she just leave?
Yeah.
Why can't she
Where's
just
she gonna
walk
go?
away? Right, exactly, because remember on the first date, she's rational. So she gets up and leaves on the first date. As Kim has already stated, that literally happened to her when he was putting that power and control over her.
Right.
It's the 6th, 7th, 8th month when it's a challenge to leave because now she's emotionally attached to this offender.
Okay.
Okay. She's looking for love. We hear this song. She's looking for love in all the wrong places. And
Looking
then Tina
for
Turner
love.
asked the question, what
What's
does love
got
have to do with it? Right? But
All
then
right.
Aretha Franklin answered that question. Aretha
What?
Franklin said RESPECT.
Need respect.
Need some respect.
You better
Okay.
come on now.
Yes, sir. So that's when you look at domestic. This is why
But the
domestic
batterer
violence
needs help, and it comes to you.
and I'm getting
All right.
that. This is why domestic violence is so complicated. Okay.
Okay.
Because although the batterer needs help, it goes back to what Kim just said. Her mother, who was a victim, encouraged her to stay. Right.
Right.
We call it generational violence.
Wow.
Okay.
I heard of generational wealth and all that, but
Now
yeah.
we have generational
Generational
violence,
violence.
okay? Janet Reno, who was the first female attorney general under the Bill Clinton administration, she coined the phrase, if we want to combat the violence on the streets, we have to stop it in the homes.
yes.
And the reason why we have so much violence on the street, so much gang banging and carjackings is because we have it in the homes.
Right. Michael Jackson had a song.
And please don't tell me beat it. Please
No.
don't say that. I'm just kidding.
Man in the Mirror.
Your man in the mirror. That's where you have to start.
There you
But
go.
right now in this world, we have about 275 million children who are living in homes of domestic violence.
Wow.
275
What impact
million.
is this having on the children?
Well, generational violence. That's the impact, right? Because a child is going
Hurt
to grow
people, hurt
up
people.
either be hurt people, hurt people, hurt
Right.
people.
Yes.
That child will grow up either being a victim, being an offender, or being both. So what help is there for offenders?
Right.
Battle intervention programs
Right.
are readily available to aid them in their walk. Is it the answer? It is an answer, not necessarily the answer.
A batterer comes to your program and says, I need help. I can't help myself. I get angry. I get upset. And I just lash out. Help me.
Yes. So first of all, and Judge Hayes will allude to this, on the first day when offenders come into these classes, and I have monitored all 28 classes across the state.
All right.
When he comes in on the first day, he's in denial. He says she is the one that should be in this class. She is the one that's crazy. She is the one that called the police. She. So he's in denial. Okay. So they don't come in saying, I need help. Not one comes in to say I need help.
Right.
It's not until
It's normal for him.
it is, and see, this is what we shouldn't do. We shouldn't normalize domestic violence. And this is why another reason it's so complicated, because we accept it, right? Why does abuse happens? Because society has accepted it. Judge Hayes has already stated 1129. If you call 1129 and then you get a 12-hour cooling off period, right? So where does he go after that 12-hour period? Judge Hayes would tell you he goes right back to that environment where he abused.
Right. Back
because
to the
society
house.
has
Open
not
the door.
opened the door, right? In fact,
Yeah.
that one call that he gets, who is he calling, Judge Hayes? He's calling the victim,
Right.
right?
Hey,
So-
I'm the judge. I'm neutral.
Yes.
calls me.
So let me talk to Kim. Let me
So
talk
it
to
sounds
Kim.
like we need to start locking these perpetrators or batterers
Well, we
up
have to
a little
have
longer.
we have to have stronger sentencing guidelines for batterers right now. Now, I am going to say this as a Tina Foxism.
Okay.
I'm not saying this
I like
on
that.
behalf of the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence.
Mm-hmm.
I am not saying this on behalf of the Domestic Violence State Coordinating Council.
All right.
I am saying this on behalf of Tina Fox.
All right.
Remember what I said to you earlier, 85% or more of all domestic violence cases are men battering women.
Right.
Why don't we have stronger laws in Tennessee?
Right.
It's because men like to batter. Now, secondly, who are the ones in power in the state of Tennessee? Men. Your legislator, mostly your legislators are men. So men set the rules so that if they get in trouble. Again, this is a Tina Foxism.
All right.
That they won't have to go to jail or prison for a long term. I'm just saying what I believe in my heart of hearts, because we
short
need
sentences.
short sentencing because men like to batter. And I'm not saying legislators like to batter. I'm saying men like to batter based on the facts. 85% or more of men are battering women. And again, these are reported numbers.
Right.
Reported numbers.
615-737-9292. We're talking about domestic violence. Kim, who is a survivor and a victim, is here to tell her story. Tina Fox is the Director of Community Relations and the statewide Director of Batterer Intervention Programs, all with the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes is also one of our guests. She is a Metro General Sessions judge. She's in charge of orders of protection. You want him to stay away or her to stay away. Go to Judge Hayes'
Well,
court.
I'm not in charge of orders of protection. That is somebody else at Judge Walker. She's in charge.
Right.
She's in charge of our domestic violence committee. I do hear a slight to the order of protection, and coming from the world that Tina is in, Ms. Fox, I used to be in that world, and now I'm a judge. So it is hearing these cases is a challenge because you can't look at it through one lens. You have to look at it through both lenses, and you have to come up with a fair decisions based upon what you're hearing.
We have a caller for you, Judge.
Okay, great.
Let's go to line 2 and talk to Cheryl. Cheryl, thank you for tuning in and being with us here on Let's Talk. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Hey, I was calling. I thought I heard. Are you all talking about domestic violence?
Yes.
This is Cheryl Allen Huff.
Hey, long, that's me.
Well, man.
We hope you're feeling better, Cheryl.
Yes.
National Action Network.
I'm feeling better than I was.
Good.
But
Okay.
I just want to say with the two things, the domestic violence, I've had several people to call trying to get away, really needing help. And as always, we run into the same situation. We're overcrowded. We don't have any space. Let me give you another number to call. And they always want to send you off someplace else. They get all of this funding, all of this stuff, but nobody's able to help women, or sometimes men, but the majority time it's women. And then that makes them upset, and they just say whatever. And then when you give them order of protection, that's just a piece of paper. That piece of paper can't save nobody. So it's something else has to happen, because we find now a lot of women are dying over abuse. And when they try to get help and keep trying to figure out what to do and to protect their children, there's no help. There's actually no help. They talk about it all the time, domestic violence help, if you feel that you're being threatened. I mean, they do commercials, radio ads. They do all of this all the time, and there's never really help out here for no one.
Wow. All right. Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Yeah, resources are hard.
She's talking about it getting to the end of the situation, where it ends in death.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm grateful for Nan and Cheryl's work. She helps
So am I.
everybody. She has done so much in the community, and so I'm glad that she is seeing this issue and wants to do something about it. One of the big resources that we do have in Nashville is the Office of Family Safety. It is a one-stop shop on Murfreesboro Road. So, and that office has wraparound services. So they have counselors there, they have police there to issue warrants, and they also have resources there for children and to access orders of protection there. So there are wraparound services there. But as we have already alluded to, I was at a meeting yesterday at One Nashville, and we were talking about mentoring resources in Nashville. It's just such a shortage of these social service needs that we have all across the board in our city. When we look at mental health, We look at domestic violence needs. We look at mentoring for children. We are definitely in a crisis, and this crisis is showing up in our courtrooms every single day.
What's the penalty for domestic violence?
The short answer is that domestic violence is a misdemeanor.
Wow.
A misdemeanor, which is
It's not a deterrent.
1129. Now, when you commit a certain number of DV charges, there is some mandatory sentencing that comes along with that. As you accumulate these charges, there's mandatory sentencing. Now, if your domestic abuse behavior arises to the level of a felony, then we're talking about a whole nother set of circumstances then in terms of time. So a strangulation, it will be considered a felony.
Right.
An aggravated assault, a serious bodily injury, or the use of a firearm is considered an aggravated assault as well.
Right. If there's a loss of life.
If there's a loss of life, now let's suppose this person was battering this individual and the person gets killed. There was a law passed some years ago that would be a second-degree murder.
Wow.
As opposed to, I guess, a voluntary or negligent homicide.
Right.
So there are some
But for
categories
domestic,
in there.
but for domestic abuse.
But for domestic assault, straight out, it's 1129 probation, and usually probation with a battery intervention program. But that's not necessarily the case. Judge Walker and Judge Floyd would be better to answer what they're seeing.
Right.
In
as far as
terms of
sentencing
there, they would be better able to answer that.
Right. Ms. Tina Fox, Director of Community Relations and Statewide Director of the Battery Intervention Programs. When a battery comes to you, this is part of the programs that the court set and sends to you?
Yes, sir. So the court, we call them special conditions.
Right.
The court imposes a special condition such as certified battery intervention programs. And so from there, they'll call me and say, hey, I need to get into a program, and we refer them appropriately to a program in their particular area. And then from there, they are assessed based on questions that are being asked of them. There is a responsibility plan. There is a lot of accountability. I do want to say that with battery intervention programs, a lot of accountability. And so from there, they jump into the program. Again, they have to complete the program. And we don't call it, if they finish the program in 26 weeks, we do not say that they have graduated. Mm-hmm. We don't say that they have successfully completed. What we say is that they have attended 26 weeks. Okay?
I got you.
Because we don't want to provide any false hope to any victims that are out there that he has successfully, he's healed. And so we just say that he has attended for those 26 weeks.
Right. Kim is a survivor. And did the batterer in your case say, first, I'm sorry?
Every
or
time.
Apologize?
And I'm not going to do it again.
Right.
Or, I would wake up in the morning if I could get out of the bed because I'm bruised and hurt and beat down. And I look over in my purse and I've got, $1,000. I've got $500, and so, that was his, I'm sorry. It was never really, I'm sorry. It was those type of gifts and things like that that would kind of supposedly compensate for the abuse. Back then, early 2000s, there wasn't a place like the place that you guys spoke about that's over on Murfreesboro Road. At least I didn't have knowledge of that.
Right.
And I think if I would have, maybe I would have gone there, And then I also think about the last time I was here, there was a young lady that was talking about that some people don't leave because they have pets. Well, I know my dog is part of my family, and I can't think about
Your
leaving
child.
him. He's one of my kids, and I couldn't think about leaving him, So not only did I go through this once, I went through this twice, as a survivor. The first time, kind of.
You left one survivor and the next person you dated?
I thought I took some time for myself. I thought I, got it together and I knew what to look for. But again, there is not a sign, there's not a shirt that says I am this person. You know, they
The
give you
representative
all
shows up.
the representative showed up, and it was not until I got pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
When I got pregnant,
Sounds like
that's
you needed
when,
some karate classes.
Well,
Fight back.
actually,
But if you do, that could be.
I didn't need those classes. I didn't want to
Hayes.
fight violence with violence. What I did do was I fought violence with protection, like Judge Kimbrough Hayes, like Judge Walker, like Chief Drake, who actually at that time was over domestic violence.
Right.
And he and I just kind of, he gave me some resources of who I needed to reach out to. Also, there was Detective Cliff Knight. Who was part of that.
Wow.
Kim down at Domestic Violence was
Kim
a part of that.
Page.
Kim Page was a part of that. And also what the young lady said about, she was kind of confused about, the financial part of it.
Yeah.
In my first situation, it was with I can't work, right? In my second situation, it was, there was a young lady that called in the last time that I was here that talked about how she was in the hospital healing from her batterer. He went down and pressed charges, and that's how that happened. That happened to me so many times, to the point.
Are you saying the batterer filed a police report?
Yeah.
And
He
you
filed a
victim?
police report, and he was the victim, not me.
Wow.
And so luckily, the geniuses at Metro Nashville Police Department and the court system and domestic violence all put it together. Actually, it was Judge at the time, she was Allegra Walker.
Right.
And I'm not sure if that's what she's still using now. Burdine, I think.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes.
And she put two and two together. She was like, this is not making sense. Hold on a second.
Right.
And so she reached out to Detective Cliff
And
Knight.
at that time, she was a DA.
She was a DA at that time. So
The
technically,
batterer calling the police.
so technically, Mr. Allen, she was not supposed to be helping me. She was supposed to be prosecuting me, right?
Yes.
And so she put two and two together and was like, this doesn't make sense. And so she realized what was happening. And from that point on, I was able to get some type of resolution and protection. He was no longer allowed to run down to night court and say, she drove past my house and so and so and so and so. We didn't have the technology that we had then. Now,
Ms. Tina Fox, you mentioned earlier 85% of men, but then again, there's that 15% or 20% of women who batter men, or same-sex partners battering each other. So, you ever hear something like that?
Oh, absolutely. We hear it all the time, particularly in these batterer intervention programs. Remember, they come in denial. She did it. She is the one that's supposed to be in this class. She. We call it victim blaming.
Okay.
Okay. They want to blame the victim.
We're not talking about mud dig and boil a pot of grits.
No. We're talking about real life victim blaming, real life victim shaming is what we're talking about. Okay. I just want to bring this out too, because it's only been 30 years since the Women's Violence Act has been brought about. 30 years. And we know what happened about 30 years ago. O.J. Simpson. He allegedly killed two persons, his ex-wife and Ron Goldman.
Right.
And right after that, his Nicole's sister, Denise, she went in front of Congress to testify. And from that, we have the Women's Violence Against Women's Act is what we have just 30 years ago. So domestic violence has been around a long, long time.
Right.
And from that, we had the domestic violence hotline that came about after the O.J. Simpson acquittal. The acquittal, okay? And in March of this year, 7 million telephone calls have been pushed out to that domestic violence hotline. We are in a crisis in this country when it comes to domestic violence. Domestic violence is complicated. And when we look at the history of the batterer intervention programs, because this is essential that we know the history. Do you know, EA, one of the reasons we have batterer intervention programs?
No.
One of the reasons we have batterer intervention programs is because of victims. Victims were saying, I don't want him to go to jail.
Right.
I don't want him to
go to court.
Don't
want to testify.
I don't want to testify, but mainly I don't want him to go to jail. If he goes to jail, who's going to pay my bills? Who is going to take care of me? Who's going to do all these things? So the battery intervention programs came along in the early 70s on behalf of victims who were saying, we don't want him to go to jail. If he goes to jail, what am I going to do?
He was just upset.
He was just upset. And he said it was not going to happen again.
Well, wait a minute. I heard that if you call the police and they show up, somebody's going to jail.
According to Tennessee law, someone has to go to jail if there is a domestic violence call.
Well, not him, because he got to go to work tomorrow. I'll go.
50% of more of all 911 calls, this is how serious this is. 50% or more of all 911 calls are domestic violence related.
Wow. Domestic violence. And of course, if you are being abused or if you know someone who is being abused, then of course, get away. Before we go, final thoughts, Judge Robin Kimbrough Hayes and Metro General Sessions Judge on domestic abuse or domestic violence.
Well, I always say you can apply for an order of protection 24 hours in Davidson County.
Yes.
And we have remarkable judges who hear these cases. And I have the honor of hearing a slice of the OP docket. And I just want to thank you so much for this work that you're doing, because you're saving lives doing this show.
Thank you. For 20 years, we've been doing this show together.
It's been a long time.
Long time. When will it end? When domestic violence ends? Tina Fox, Director of Community Relations and statewide Director of the Batterer Intervention Program with the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence. Final thoughts? Word to the batterer, especially?
Yes, that help is available for those who are in a situation where they are abusing. And all they have to do is they can self-refer. It doesn't have to be a court referral.
Okay.
We do accept self-referrals. And so all they have to do is call the Tennessee Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence and say, hey, I am an abuser and I need some help. And we would definitely help them, because we believe in victim safety first.
Yes.
And so not only is help available, hope is available as well.
All right. Tina Fox, you know you have an open invitation to come back.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Get on this 20-year program we're on with Judge Hayes, so she knows she has an open invitation.
Yes, thank you, sir.
And, of course, Kim, who was a victim and now a survivor. Your message to other people or anyone that may be a victim of domestic abuse or domestic violence.
So I am a 2-time survivor, and my situations would not be they're part of my life. They're my testimony, most definitely. I now know what not to do.
Right.
I'm happily married now for, the past few years to an amazing man. And I just, I just commend these new programs that are available, because they were not available, when I was going through the situations that I was going through, or they were just like a one-day class or a few hours classes, things like that. People ask me, oh, I know you wish you would have never gone through that. No, I do. I'm okay with have gone through what I've gone through, because again, it is who I am now. It is my testimony. I cannot be, shaken the way that I was prior to. If it
doesn't seem like it's going to change or stop, get out of the relationship.
Get out of it. That one, I won't ever do it again is not the truth. He will do it again. He will hurt you again. And I pray that you are able to walk away as I did, not one time, but 2 times.
All right. Amen.
So get some help, please. It's out there.
Victim now a survivor. And her message is, if it just seems like it's just not going to work out, just get away. Get away. And, of course, domestic violence. We call it just power and control. Key words here. Don't stay in it. Get out of it. Batterers, it is wrong to put your hands on someone else. Do not put your hands on someone else.
Right.
All right? We need to stop it before it ends too violently. Judge Hayes is here. She's here. And, of course, always have an open invitation to come back.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And, of course, June is also Gun Violence Prevention Awareness Month. If you see a lot of people wearing orange, they're bringing new highlights to gun violence. That can be a part of domestic violence.
Yes, sir.
We don't want that.
That's right.
Just go. I'm gone. Out of here. You know? Yeah, that's what you say. And hopefully he says the same thing or vice versa. All right. As always, remember to respect your father and your mother. Love your brother and teach your sister how to be a lady. Until we talk again on Let's Talk next episode, it's been our pleasure. We hope it's been yours.
You've been listening to Let's Talk with your host, Ernie Allen. The views and opinions expressed on Let's Talk do not necessarily represent the position of this radio station or management on the subject matter. Let's Talk is a presentation of the News and Public Affairs Department of 92Q. Check out this and previous Let's Talk shows online at